Hey YouTubers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victor Quintana and today we are going to be going over my personal photo settings for the Leica SL2. So stick around. Alright guys, so I have actually been shooting with the Leica SL2 for quite some time now, and honestly I absolutely love working and using this camera just because of the sheer simplicity of it. If you've seen some of my other videos about the camera, I go in depth as to the new features compared to the old SL601. So definitely check those out if you're interested in seeing a first impression video. All right, so first things first, let's turn on this bad boy. And now, as you can see, the screen is blank because I don't have a lens attached to it, so obviously it's gonna be black. But let's go through the menu and we'll get you all set up. All right, so starting from the left, the first option that you'll see here is going to be your exposure mode. And here you can choose program, manual, aperture priority, and shutter priority. Typically, I personally like to leave it on manual, that way I have full control over my camera settings. Next up, you're going to see the shutter speed. Here, I can change it either with my joystick, with the back wheel, or I could even just use my finger to change it as well. Next up, we have the ISO setting. Again, we can adjust it with the joystick here in the back, with our finger, or with the scrolling wheel as well. And that is universal with all of the different options, so I'm not going to keep showing you that. I think you guys get the point. Next up, we have our exposure compensation options. So here again, you can raise it or lower it. Then going back to the left, we have our picture mode. Typically, I leave it in single. If the client is looking to showcase the fabric in the wind or having it move, then I will go into my picture mode and usually pick continuous low speed. You have to keep in mind that since these files are 42 megapixels, they're very big. So shooting in high continuous speed or any other faster mode is really going to eat up your space on your cards. So just keep that in mind. So let's go back to single here. Next up, we have our focusing mode. So here you're able to choose from 4 different options. Now, the first one that we have here is the intelligent autofocus. Now, basically what this does, the IAF focus mode focuses and locks onto a selected point while keeping an eye out for any movement in your subject. So when my subject is moving with the dress and it's flowing, the intelligent autofocus is able to stay focused on my actual subject even though she's moving, panning from side to side. It's smart enough to keep that focus. So next up, we have Autofocus S, which is Autofocus Single. Basically, you set your autofocus to a single point and it'll stay focused on that point. Now, if the point or subject moves, you will lose autofocus. So next up, we have Autofocus Continuous. So this mode is used primarily for sports, wildlife, or if you have fast moving subjects. And the last option is manual focus. Now, typically I like to leave it in manual focus because I really enjoy back focusing with the joystick in the back. So when I am kind of in my viewfinder here, I just press on the back joystick and it will focus onto my subject. Now, this is a pretty straightforward way of acquiring focus. You set your focus to one point and the camera will look for the contrast in that point. We just talked about the different autofocusing modes. Next, we're gonna talk about how the autofocus actually is working. So here we have the options of multi-field, spot, field, zone, tracking, and face and body detection. Typically when I'm shooting, I'll put the camera into either spot or field. And I feel like those are the 2 options that I get the best autofocus results when shooting with models or for fashion brands. Now on the SL2, we have a new feature that we didn't have on the original SL, and that is the type of autofocus profiles. Now for my shoots, I'm typically on the runner profile. I set my depth sensitivity to +1, my field movement to -1, and then my shift in direction at 0. I just have found that the way that I shoot, these have been the best settings for me. I encourage you to try out different settings and play with the different values to kind of fine tune and see what settings are best for your type of shooting. Now onto the metering modes. I prefer using spot metering, even though you do have the option of center weighted or multi-field. Now I like spot metering mode because I typically put that on either the model's face or the garments and fashion that she's wearing, because that is the most important thing in my photo. The background I can always compensate for or bring it back up in post if necessary. All right, so next on the menu is the white balance and color temperature. Now, typically for my photo shoots, I like to set my own color temperature in Kelvin, and I will range anywhere between 5,000 all the way up to 7,200. And that really all depends on the location that we're shooting, the sun that's out that day, and just the overall kind of look and feel of the photos that we're after. Now, going back to the left side of the menu, the bottom row, we have the option of the type of photo file we want to be taking. For those of you who don't know, DNG is the raw file that you would get from your photo. But you do have the option for a large JPEG and your raw DNG. And then you also have options for just a large JPEG, medium JPEG with DNG, medium JPEG, small JPEG with DNG, and a small JPEG. I would only really shoot JPEGs if I'm shooting maybe just a family event or just something that I know is not going to need a lot of intense adjustments, whether that be in Lightroom, Capture One, or Photoshop. For all my client work though, I am shooting in DNG, full raw files, 42 megapixels, because I want to be able to have the option to manipulate the photo the most that I possibly can if necessary. We always like to try to get the photo right in camera first though. Next up on my quick menu screen is the formatting of the SD card options. I like to have this on my quick menu because I typically forget whether a card is used or not used, and I always have to check it before a shoot. So having that as a quick menu option is awesome. Next up, we have the profiles. So there's a default profile. I have a specific video profile here for shooting 4K at 60. And then I actually also have another one, which is for shooting in 1080p, but at 120 frames per second. But those are really only just for video. I don't really have any profiles set up for photos just because I end up changing my settings depending on the location, depending on the specific shoot and what's available as far as light during that shoot. So next up in the quick menu, we have a locking option, and this is for locking your scrolling wheels. So if you find that you're bumping into your back scrolling wheel or hitting the front scrolling wheel, you can actually lock those so you don't change any settings if you don't want to. Next up, we have the Leica Photos App button, and honestly, I haven't been using this very much. I'm not sure if the app is actually currently working. If you are currently using the app in your workflow, please let me know. I did try to connect the camera recently to the app and it just was not connecting whatsoever. I need to read up on whether they're doing some changes to it or upgrading it, or whether it's down for maintenance. Again, if you're having an awesome time with the app and not having any issues, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear about your experience with that. And last but not least, the button that we have all the way on the right on the quick menu basically is just a button to get into your full menu here. And that will give you the full 6 pages of the menu for the Leica SL2. Now, those are pretty much my settings for when I am out photographing with the SL2. I want to quickly go over some of the custom buttons that I have here as well. So starting off, my function button is set to switch between different screen displays. I like to be able to clear out the screen completely whenever I'm showing either a model or a client the photos. That way they're not being distracted by any sort of settings or anything like that. Next up, I have most of my settings here, and this is the display that I have where it's showing my focus peaking, so I can be sure that I am focused on the right subject. Next up, I have a grid display. This kind of helps me frame my subject and just frame the entire scene. It also gives me a horizon line in case I need to have a very specific horizon for whatever reason. Next up, the top two buttons up here, one is going to be set for switching between photo and video modes on the Leica SL2, and the other one is set to my ISO. Moving to the front of the camera, the Leica SL2 does have two custom buttons here in the front, which is really nice because the original Leica SL601 only had the one custom button. My top button here is actually set to magnification, which I really enjoy using when I'm shooting with M-glass. That gives me a little bit more security in the fact that I am focused on the right subject, so it actually magnifies the image and I can actually pinpoint exactly where I want my focus to be. And now this bottom button, I actually have it set to my autofocus mode, and here I like it because I can switch from spot to face and body tracking within a second or two. Typically I'm shooting with spot autofocus mode, but sometimes I do like to play around with face and body detection, especially if I'm coming in close for portraiture. It's a nice and easy way to switch. I don't have to go into the quick menu or even into the full menu. It's just one quick button here. Now, the last customizable button that I have set here is this back button here between the EVF and the joystick, and that is basically just switching between only viewing through the EVF, only viewing through the LCD, or having auto switching between the LCD and the EVF. One thing to note, if you have been shooting with the Leica SL2 or Leica SL2S, I'm curious if you've come across this issue, because I certainly have many times. The sensor on my viewfinder actually has given me trouble in the past because it will sense that I am actually looking through the viewfinder even though the camera is way away from my face. And I don't know whether that is my camera specific. I did purchase this used, but the person that I purchased it from had only used it maybe a handful of times. I'm talking like 3 or 4. It was just too heavy of a camera for them. So I don't think that they really were able to do anything about the sensor. Like, I don't think they would have messed it up in any sort of way. So I don't know whether that's just this camera specifically, or if other people who have been using the Leica SL2 or Leica SL2S have had that same issue. I have been wanting to send it into the factory in Allendale, but just with COVID, the wait times have been kind of ridiculous, although I have been hearing that they've been doing a lot better on timing, so I might need to look into that again, because it is kind of frustrating when you're trying to show someone the back of the LCD screen and it's completely black and I have to go in there and switch it to just LCD screen. It's a whole thing. So those are my go-to photo settings for using the Leica SL2S. Hopefully I was able to give you some perspective on a couple of different options that I personally use. I encourage you to play around with the different settings in different environments and different situations. That way you can get a better feel of how the camera works and how you can make the camera work better for your specific needs. If you enjoyed this video, would mean a lot if you liked, shared, and if you enjoy this type of content, please make sure to subscribe below. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below as well. I am happy to answer anything I possibly can, and I will add it to my list of videos that I need to produce and come out with more on a regular basis. So until next time, My name is Victor Quintana. Thank you for watching and hope you have a great rest of your day.